The following is a presentation of the Eagles Sports Network.
All right, Mike Clowney opening up South Atlantic Conference play with a road trip to Limestone. Start us off with a statement about the Saints.
Well, the Saints are a really good football team. That's where we, competitive game here with them last year. I think it finished in double overtime. And you kind of look at where they finished from there last season, being able to go play in the playoffs. Good football team. That's where I think you can make the misconception of looking at their record right now and saying they're 0-2, but they played two really good football teams, and they played both of them really close. They're athletic up front on both sides of the ball. Their guys on the back end can run. Trey Stewart is an all-conference running back for them that returns this year. So overall, it's just a really good football team. It'll be a good task for our team this week.
You've had an interesting start to your schedule between playing VUL and ETSU. How do you grade Carson-Newman against two opponents that are pretty divergent from where your own program is?
I think it's been good for us because you got one game to where, we pretty much dominated the game, the entire time. And when you play those games, sometimes like if your opponent's not – on the same level as you, then you can kind of get away with doing some things that aren't always completely sound. And then you flip the script and then you go play, I say a team that's a little bit bigger than you, a level above you, and then you don't get away with as much of, that stuff. And then the little things that you do become a lot more critical. The details, your coaching, really kind of kicks in at that point in time. And so we're able to go see that on film, and it gives us a good measuring stick as far as where we're at and the things that we need to do to get better. And now the challenge is being able to go out and put those things into practice.
You kind of touched on it with Limestone, a very dangerous 0-2 team. This is a team that was just outside of the top 25 in the preseason poll, put up 480 yards of offense on West Georgia, really couldn't find the end zone. It feels like they are close. How do you prevent them from closing that gap against your own team, which has shown some pretty staunch defense through 2 weeks?
It's about continuing to take that next step for us. I think is we've got to continue to go and be persistent on getting better, be persistent on eliminating some of the mistakes that we made, to where we can kind of get some tackling stuff cleaned up. But I think the big thing for us, especially from a defense standpoint, the effort's been there. And then we'll flip on the other side of the ball. It kind of goes into that same thing. Game where you score decent and game where you don't score at all. Where we got to be able to go, execute a little bit better, clean some things up front, and then be able to attack and hit holes the way we need to.
Touched on him earlier, Trey Stewart. Put up on $180 on you a year ago. He is one of the best backs in a back-heavy league. What separates him from others in this conference?
His change of speed. He's the guy that can go to 0 to 100 real fast. He does a good job of seeing things, and when he sees a gap, he hits it, and then, he's got good enough speed to run away from people. So you have to make sure you do a good job of keeping him hemmed up early.
They've had issues at quarterback. Dustin Noller, the starter, coming into the season, went down with an injury in the opening week against West Georgia. Cal Endicott was serviceable against West Alabama and passed for 260 yards. Suppose you could see, presumably, one or the other. How are they similar? How are they different in what they do?
Noller's been there, and he's been a quarterback for a long time. Just a really good athlete, good quarterback, throws the ball well. Is a really good threat to run. The other kid doesn't run as well, but now he's 6'4" or whatever, and he has no problem throwing the ball over the top of people. So when you watch the video, you got a running back that's capable of running, and then again, you got to still have a quarterback that's capable of putting the ball downfield. So, they don't have a quarterback problem.
Defensively, they gave up yards in places last year, gave up points in places last year. Really aren't doing that through 2 weeks this season. What do you see that's different about the Saints defense?
They're doing a couple things different that they didn't do. I know last year was, Coach Fury, they were fairly new coming in. So, they've expanded a lot of what they're doing, from last year. And then the effort of their kids, they do a good job of running to the football.
Internally for your club, special teams, that was Saturday. What's the process been like this week early to correct those miscues on punt return and the punt, really both sides of the punt unit?
The big thing, number one, you got to diagnose the problem, and then the thing that you identify is, there's just a guy here or there that's not handling the responsibility the way they need to. And so then the thing that you got two options, that guy's got to do it better, you got to change that guy. And so, that's the thing that we're looking at. The number one goal is to continue to work to push, for those guys that we have in there involved, is to continue to work to get better. And a lot of times, we've got some guys there that doesn't play as much, sometimes on offense and defense, and then challenging some of those guys that, play a little bit more. They may have to go play special teams. That's the first defensive play, when we talk about punt team. And so, we've got to accept that challenge to make sure that we don't continue to put ourselves in bad field position.
Jake Cottle has been, I don't want to call him a pleasant surprise on the defense because he started to show up late in his freshman season. But if I were a betting man, I would have him leading the league in sacks through the first 2 weeks of the season. What's he doing to get into the backfield frequently and fervently?
I think Jake played a good little bit last year and did a good job for us in spots and areas. If I had to use a word to kind of describe his improvement, it's consistency. He's getting to the point now that where he does it more than he did it a year ago. And I think a lot of that's a testament to just being in position to do it more. You learn more. You become a little bit more, I hate using the word comfortable, but confident, I guess is a better word, in what's going on. And that confidence is allowing them to be able to make more plays.
I find it fascinating that the new part of your defense this year was and is the linebacking core, and I guess it says something to the consistency of the other areas that you plug in a Clowney, you plug in a Christian Hicks, and those guys are doing exactly what an Alonzo Houston did last year. Morris Coates before that. Is there truth in that this is just the system working, and a Hicks, a Storm Levacy, a Jake Cottle are the next pieces to be plugged in here?
I think that's what, when we first started, the thing was looking for that consistency, and the big key to that is keeping guys in the program to where you aren't completely starting over, hopefully, at any point in time. Even though a guy leaves, you've got someone in the program that's been here for a year or two, and when it's their time, they're ready to go. And it's hard for kids this day and time to be patient like that, but, that's just how, really life I won't say football works, but life in general works. The thing that you do is you plan, you prepare, you put your time in. Every now and then there's a kid that can come in and play, his first year in college football. But if any of us do a good job, it shouldn't happen. So those guys have been here. They've worked their tail off while they're here. And, then they get to just kind of plug themselves into the equation without us losing a whole lot. I think the defensive coaches have done a great job of coaching and preparing them and getting them ready. Coach Slade, as a coordinator, and Coach Brock as the linebacker coach. I think they've both done a good job of prepping those guys. But I think another side of it that's real pleasing to me is just the defense in general. Just continue to work to take ownership over themselves. It is something that I think is a big part of that. Because of their relationships with one another, it's important for those guys to come in and function well.
You talk about guys playing early. It has happened offensively. Cam Ferguson gets a start against FCS, ETSU at running back. Xavier McKinney, I can't think of the last time a true freshman started on the offensive line. You might have to go way back to Kevin Day in the late 2010s to find a guy starting that early in his career. But it doesn't feel like it's out of necessity with those two. What have they done to put themselves so frequently into the fray so early?
I think our older guys have done a good job of helping those guys make transitions. I mean, when you look at Xavier coming in as an offensive lineman, he come in early. He was able to kind of come in early to kind of learn a little bit more of what's happening. We had one or two older guys that didn't come in, and so it gave him a little bit of an advantage to be able to come in and compete right now, because we were kind of doing a couple things a little bit different offensively, and so he kind of got ahead of the curve a little bit there. And then when you look at Cam Ferguson, he's a kid that he come in this summer too, and he just worked, competed, and And then unfortunately on his side, like we had a couple guys that, had some injuries. And so, but the thing that he did was just show up to work every day so that we didn't have a drop off. And so I think, same thing, offensive coaches. I think, Coach Ray is O-line coach and Coach Weaver's a running back coach. And then, Coach McKeithen just finding the things that they can do, pushing them every day, trying to find that consistency from them is giving those guys a chance to play.
To harken back to the dark times of that COVID year where you were off and on trying to get how much does this really underscore the value of that voluntary prep time in the summer?
I mean, it's all about reps. When you talk about this game, it's all about reps. The more you can do something, the better you get at it. And that's where we even talk to our kids all the time about, finding ways to steal reps. When they come to your office, like, hey, coach, I want more reps. And, in my mind as a player, you have an opportunity to get every rep we take. If you just decide to engage in that rep, if I go hang out with my friends, I'm not going to get it. And so I think that's one thing that you see those guys being able to do is learn to engage in those reps. And our older guys are getting to the point to where they understand that a little bit better. And it's always better coming from their peers, and when we say something and their peers say it, then it becomes important. But when it's not important to them, then it especially for a young kid, it becomes a little bit less important because they're normally not as focused as your senior players are anyway.
Anything else?
Nope, I'm just looking forward to a good game on Saturday.